Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to season 6 of the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kayla Smith, a holistic integrative doctor specializing in fertility and hormone health. If you're looking for insights into hormones, fertility, and all things related, you've come to the right place. Tune in weekly as we interview amazing experts in the field of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're finally going to help you put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get and stay pregnant and eliminate all your hormone-related symptoms for good. Are you ready? This season, we're focusing closely on fertility and hormone health with an amazing lineup of expert guests sharing groundbreaking knowledge, bringing you stories and advice that will support you in your fertility journey. We're here to lift your spirits, give you a virtual hug and inspiration, as well as empower you to take charge of your fertility and your health. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being an amazing listener. So now, let's get started on your road to transformation. Let's start piecing together your hormone puzzle one step at a time. On today's show, we have Dr. Amelia Kelley. She is a trauma-informed therapist, author, researcher, and host of the Sensitivity Doctor podcast. Her specialties include art therapy, internal family systems, EMDR, and Brainspotting. And she's a certified meditation and yoga instructor. She is a psychology professor at Yorkville University, as well as a nationally recognized relationship expert featured on XM Radio's Doctor Channel on the Psychiatry Show and NPR's The Measure of Everyday Life. Her private practice is part of the Trauma Stress Research Consortium at Kinsey Institute. She's also the author of several books, including Gaslighting Recovery for Women, The Complete Guide to Recognizing Manipulation and Achieving Freedom from Emotional Abuse, Powered by ADHD Strategies and Exercises for Women to Harness the Untapped Gifts, as well as the co-author of What I Wish I Knew, Surviving and Thriving After an Abusive Relationship. Surviving suicidal ideation, from therapy to spirituality and lived experiences, and the contributing author of Psychology Today, ADDitude Magazine, and Highly Sensitive Refuge. Her work has also been featured in Teen Vogue, Yahoo News, Lifehacker, Well and Good, Self, Huffington Post, and The Insider. Today, we're going to talk to Dr. Kelley about how trauma impacts hormone balance and fertility and give you practical steps for identifying, releasing, and healing. Now, let's welcome Dr. Kelley to the podcast. Hey, Dr. Kelley, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Dr. Kayla, thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to talk to you. We have a lot of listeners that are really interested in learning more about how trauma impacts fertility. So I know this is going to be a great conversation, and I'm really excited to have it.
Awesome. Yeah, both topics that I'm very passionate about. So I'm thrilled to have this conversation today.
Amazing. Well, let's just dive right into things. Tell us more about you and how you got into this work.
Sure. So I'm in the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina. I've been a trauma-informed therapist now for 2 decades. I'm also a teacher, podcaster, which we were just chatting about you coming on my podcast, The Sensitivity Doctor. But interestingly, my whole world of trauma work started with my own fertility journey. And so that was a big catalyst for me, learning certain techniques like EMDR, Brainspotting, prolonged exposure, just a handful of things that could help the nervous system heal after the trauma of fertility. And from there was so many other things that I realized, not only that, but, generational trauma and just all these other things that I'm realizing kind of led me in that direction. But since then, I've been so fortunate after writing a handful of books, to be able to sit down with so many amazing people, authors, podcasters, people like yourself who just want to take information. I think it's really important. We take information that you might learn in a doctor's office or a therapist's office and make it accessible to everyone, but in a really careful way, not in a way where we're, overdoing things and, expressing things that aren't actually founded with research and science. So that's also very important to me.
For sure. I love that. And I love that you've taken your story and turned it into your work. And I think it's so powerful and it impacts a lot of people. So thank you for doing the work that you do and for coming and sharing that with us. That's
for
amazing.
Sure. I'm happy to.
Yes. And so let's talk about our topic at hand, trauma. So talk to us in general terms, how trauma impacts fertility.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is to realize what trauma is. I think that's helpful. Because really our understanding of trauma has luckily been evolving over the last couple decades. Trauma as far as a diagnosis really didn't start creeping into offices and diagnoses until the 70s, which is wild because it's been around since humans have existed. Because trauma at its core is any experience that pulls us out of our ability to normally function. So I don't know if you've ever heard little t versus big T trauma before, but I think that's a helpful way to unpack it. It's very basic, but something like starting a new job or having, a childbirth or moving can be its own form of trauma because it pulls you out of your normal way of functioning, and your nervous system and your body and your mind sometimes don't know how to catch up. But through resilience, through coping, through support, we get through those little t traumas usually quite effectively, as long as you've got that resilience pattern where you have ways to ask for help or take rest or do what you need to take care of yourself. Get movers, all these things to help support you. The large T trauma, I think, is what we normally think of when we think of trauma. And this is going to be things, again, that pull you out of the norm, but usually at a point where it interferes with your safety or someone else's safety and you're witnessing this. And it's really important to know there's also forms of secondary trauma where if you're just the witness to someone else's trauma, there's forms of generational trauma that we're exploring and learning. So the way that mothers impacted their babies in the womb even, or epigenetics. It's just a wild, wide frontier. But at the very essence of how it impacts fertility, our nervous system is so delicately intertwined in every function that our body has and makes. And the fertility that we have, what we have, our whole system involved in that is also run by our nervous system. So a traumatized body is going to have a different way of functioning. And there's even some, and we'll definitely dive into this, I'm sure, but when you experience trauma in your cycle can impact your fertility. For trauma, the way that your inflammation can affect your fertility. I feel like I'm answering, I think we should almost break this down because there's so many ways that it can impact fertility.
Sure. And I love that you mentioned the little t and the big T because I think maybe some people listening have heard that before, but it's a great reminder. And I love too to point out, and I'm sure you can agree with this, but I talked to many therapists on this show, and they've often said that trauma is anything that jars your nervous system. So it can be something as simple as your mom left you in your crib too long when you're an infant, and your body stored that trauma, even if you might not remember it years and years later. So we really need to be paying attention to that, and anything that jars us, we need to think, was this trauma? Is this something we need to focus on?
Right.
Sure. And that leads me to my next question is, trauma can be stored in the body, as we've discussed, and it can manifest physically into physical symptoms. So talk to us about that. How does that happen? And are you seeing that within your practice?
Definitely. So there's a lot of ways it can impact us physically. One of the things I had mentioned very quickly was inflammation. So trauma has there's a couple reasons why inflammation can happen from trauma. On a very baseline level, the way that our body responds when we're hypervigilant is that we are much more tense. We are, when we're in that more like fight flight mode, that many people have heard that term before. Your body is sending tension and signaling that different parts of the body need to be over functioning and other parts of the body need to be under functioning. And because of that, when you're doing this over a period of time, you can cause these chronic issues that can be impacted by not just overall inflammation, but even inflammation in certain areas of the body. So when we think of fertility specifically, let's think of someone who maybe potentially experienced the horror of sexual abuse as one example. There is a lot of research out there that shows, and I've seen this anecdotally with clients that I work with, and we're very blessed to have some amazing pelvic centers around here at UNC and a handful of smaller practices where the whole pelvic floor can become essentially kind of closed off, where it becomes so tight and so tense from that need to protect itself at the time where it didn't get to. You know, I'd said earlier, and I like how you said jarred the nervous system. One of the things that I love about, I don't know if you know who Peter Levine is and his work with somatic experiencing. One of the things that I loved, I believe it was in his book, Waking the Tiger. I'm like looking over on my bookshelf to see what the name exactly is. But there's this story about these children and a bus driver. Have you ever heard this story about
I don't think so. No.
Okay. So,
yes. Yeah.
okay. So they were actually taken hostage. And just disclaimer for anyone, trigger warning, it ends up fine. They were taken hostage. They were put into a living grave, like a cave, and trapped. So all of these children and the adults that were on the bus, I think they were on their way to like a field trip or something. The interesting thing though, and this is so far back, I want to say it was in the 70s that they were able to longitudinally study these children. The kids who were involved in digging the hole that allowed them all to escape and get out down the road longitudinally had better outcomes with PTSD symptoms.
Wow.
Than those who were not able to physically mobilize and do something to get themselves out of their trauma.
Oh my goodness.
So this speaks to the idea of completing a trauma cycle. One example is like you're on a diving board, right? You're going up the ladder, you stand at the edge and you jump. Even professional divers, when you jump, that initial jump is a little trauma to the body. You slice through the water, you come back up, you take a big breath of air. Oh, okay, I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm alive. You know, and you like swim back to the side. That's a completed trauma cycle. But we somatically, as just forebrain thinking humans, don't always shake the way a dog does after they experience the trauma of being attacked in a dog park, for instance. So when we experience different traumas, you brought up a baby being left in a crib. What a perfect example of a vulnerable being a vulnerable human who can't mobilize. There's so many traumas that we can't mobilize and do something to complete the trauma cycle and show our body we're safe. Mm-hmm. And so these are things, these stuck patterns can actually manifest in the way we hold our body and the way that inflammation shows up in our body. So this is inflammation only. I could go on to the next step of how it impacts our health, but I don't know if you have any questions about that.
Yeah, no, that was great. And I'm sure we'll get into this too, but so what do we do, you know, how do we start to release some of this trauma? Well, first, how do we identify it? If it happened as an infant, say, we're not going to remember that. So how do we identify? And then how do we start to release? You know, I definitely want to go there, but if there's any other examples that you want to mention before we do that about just different symptoms that we might experience aside from inflammation, let's kind of go there first. And then we'll get into, okay, well, how do we identify? How do we release?
Okay. Yes. I'm dying to answer the question about inflammation. So we'll go to that. We'll put it on the shelf. I'm also a yoga teacher. So you like totally hit my interest there. So we'll come back to that. So other things to be mindful of is that trauma can actually change the structure of our brain. So the areas of the brain that are responsible for hypervigilance, specifically in the limbic system, can become more active and more reactive. And in some ways, we want this a little bit. You can see why survival-wise this is a thing. There's research about postpartum mothers, for instance, where their amygdalas become even ever so slightly, I don't want to say inflamed because that's not the right word, but enlarged,
Yes.
after childbirth. And they have found that fathers who are really involved in child rearing and adoptive parents who are really involved in child rearing also get this expansion in the amygdala. There's a survival reason for this. So it makes sense when we think about trauma in the body. We don't want to be angry at our parts of our body that feel like they're betraying us, because all they're doing is trying to keep us safe, but in a way that's no longer working once the trauma has ended. And so the vigilance of, I'm going to make sure my baby doesn't fall down the stairs, is very valid. The vigilance of, I need to be aware of every single male that crosses my path because of the one time that I was abused, is not going to be conducive to health. Because when we are in this constant state, it can also impact our immune system. So that's another way that trauma can impact us negatively. You've probably heard of the ACE study? Right.
Yeah.
So the adverse childhood experiences, which ironically was originally a study on obesity.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
And
I know that.
well, and it makes me think that that's probably why they were able to get such a huge participant pool, because they were studying something different. And then lo and behold, they started to recognize, for any of your listeners who have not heard of it, you can look up online what your ACE score is by taking a simple test. The more potential traumas you experienced younger in life, the more potential negative impact on your health and morbidity. That's not a closed story, though, just like it's not a closed story on how it impacts your fertility, because doing things like listening to your podcast, doing the things that you offer, putting your health first, knowing that openness and safety are things that your body deserve to feel, is a great anecdote to what the ACE is trying to paint a picture about. So we've got the immune system, we have the brain structures that change. Even the frontal lobe can become a little bit less active, because the frontal lobe is really responsible for higher order executive thoughts. When we're trying to survive, we don't need to know how to do algebra.
No.
Right? So
Right.
there's certain areas of the brain that are going to become less active. And we know after doing something repeatedly over time, the pruning of our neurons start to, I don't want to say kill off, it sounds dramatic, but make those areas less active. So the immune system, the brain structure, the inflammation, and then we have a whole nother thing about how it can actually impact your ovaries. We could get into a whole conversation about ovaries.
Sure. And then one other thing too, I wanted to mention, and I think we touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but just your nervous system. If your nervous system is high alert and you're stuck in fight or flight, your body's not going to be safe enough to reproduce. And so it's just not going to. It'll block it. And so let's kind of touch on that for a minute. Talk to us a little further about trauma, past or present, that can affect our nervous system.
Well, you know what I love bringing up when we think about this too is the vagus nerve. Okay. So for anyone who doesn't know what the vagus nerve is, it's the bundle of nerves at the base of your skull, essentially, and it branches out throughout the entire body and lets your body know whether you're safe or not. And if you're safe, can your body function optimally? And if you're not safe, how do we shut down areas of the body that don't need to function so we can be safe? So the thing is that our body is not really good. We haven't evolved to this state we're in. We haven't evolved in a way where we can know that, being late to pick our child up from school, or, honestly, the sheer horror of seeing another negative pregnancy test. It is every month. It's like a little mini trauma. And I don't want to say mini to minimize, but it's no one's in danger in the moment, but it's the body reads it as it's happening like that. So the vagus nerve, there are amazing ways to tone it, meaning like strengthen the structures around it and make it more effective at doing what it's meant to do. And actually at my private practice, we offer the Safe and Sound protocol. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I haven't. No, I would love to hear more. I do know vagus nerve, stimulation and strengthening exercises, but let's talk about that.
Well, and here's a fun little, I don't know, story for your listeners. Anyone who knows who Dr. Porges is, My very dear friend, Greg Lewis. Hi, Greg. You're probably not listening, but still, if you're out there.
You're trying to get pregnant, maybe.
Yeah. He's got all his kids already, but he was the fellow under Dr. Porges at UNC, Dr. Porges being the one who created the polyvagal theory. So I go into Greg's son's birthday party, maybe second birthday or something, and we walk in and I see Dr. Porges. And I turn to my husband, I'm like, do you know who that is? And he's like, I have no idea. Like I was totally fangirling. Like I saw I don't know, Justin Timberlake or something in the room. So, so the Safe and Sound protocol is a passive listening therapy, and passive because you don't have to do anything. You're just listening. That is music that's been prosodically altered. And prosody is this kind of higher voice that we, for example, talk to our kids in or even you, just meeting you when you and I got on today, I didn't say, hi, Dr. Kayla. Yeah. Like I wasn't doing that. That's not nice. So, we have prosody to signal that there's safety because vocal tone and facial expression are the first ways we identify if someone is safe. Mm. And that's why I urge anyone listening, please stop having fights over text.
Right.
Please don't do it.
I know my husband will be like, how does a text sound? I'm like, you sound really mad right now. How does a text sound? It's neutral.
I will say though, I do find texting to be like a nice way to kind of diffuse after. Like you've had the argument and you're still fuming and then you want to kind of just say that one last thing.
Right.
But for anyone you're not intimately connected with, not the best idea. But so you listen, it's 5 hours of treatment where you're listening to the music. And what the music does is it strengthens the structure around the vagus nerve because after trauma, and this can even be medical trauma. So I experienced a very traumatic birth with my first daughter that was 40 hours of unprogressive labor that ended in an emergency C-section.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Wow. So needless to say, I definitely experienced a little bit of postpartum trauma from that. So I did the Safe and Sound protocol because after trauma or chronic stress, the structure can kind of become lax, almost like a wobbly drum, a loose drum. And if you hit a loose drum with a mallet, it makes a very low vibration. That super low vibration can signal to your body that there's danger even when there's not.
Oh, wow.
And so it can make you more sensitive to voices, crowds, being in loud spaces. So it's just a really beautiful way to regulate and take care of your nervous system in a very relaxed way. So people, if they want to learn more, they can go on, it's actually on my private practice website, Kelley-Counseling, where they can learn more. And if they're interested in the treatment, it's something you can even do remotely.
Wow. I love that. It's amazing. And such a, I don't want to say simple thing, but something that you can do at home and
totally
have control back. So I love pieces, practical pieces like that. It's amazing. And we'll link that in the show notes so people can find it.
Yeah.
Well, let's go and talk because I know I could talk all day about this topic, but we do have to continue to move. So let's talk about what I said earlier, kind of how do we identify that we've had trauma, even if it's trauma that we don't remember. And then once we identify, what are some practical pieces other than what you just mentioned with the vagus nerve, regulation, or is there anything else we can do to start to release this trauma and heal?
Well, I think the first thing is to really validate that anything that makes you feel disconnected from a sense of self or sense of safety is worth examining. And I have because I work with a lot of people leaving abusive relationships. That's really the core of my beginning of my practice in trauma. And a lot of people in these relationships or even who experienced abuse as a child will say, well, at least they didn't hit me. Or at least they didn't put their hands on me. And so I just really urge people to understand that just because your life may not be potentially in danger doesn't mean that you didn't experience trauma. If you have needs that are chronically not being met, especially in relationships that should be providing those needs, there is so much room for complex trauma and complex PTSD that we're learning more and more about to develop. So for example, with complex PTSD, if you feel like you have a hard time trusting people, if you feel like the world is out to get you, if you feel like, you just are never going to get a shot at something, if you feel anxious about putting yourself into foreign situations, if you're avoiding certain things chronically, or you're fearful and you can't really place your finger on why. These are kind of some of the thought patterns, especially with complex trauma, I would look out for. And that's not even to say acute or kind of more single incident, or these more, I don't want to say, life-threatening trauma that can be a little bit easier to point, yes, I was exposed to that potential shooting, or yes, I was in this natural disaster. Those come with similar thoughts about safety. However, both are going to have some of the symptoms like hypervigilance, avoiding people, places, and things related to any trauma. Nightmares are very common, very common. If you feel like you're having nightmares and you can't place your finger on why or where they're coming from, I would explore that, especially if it's chronic and it continues. I actually offer something called imagery rehearsal therapy, which is this really awesome, simple way to work through, especially reoccurring nightmares from trauma. But you said something I think is important for people to think about too, that not all traumas can be remembered.
Yeah.
And the reason is because trauma doesn't get stored linearly. It's not like a grocery list that we can just kind of pull and place everything neatly in a row. Because when we are under a sense of trauma or a threat, that jarring you were talking about, everything is jarred up. So even the way we store the memory can be jarred. And so sometimes memories won't come back. And I encourage folks, work on the way you're feeling, whether or not you know why you're feeling it.
I love that.
Right. And even if you don't know the details, it's okay. Like, please don't be hard on yourself. Go with the feeling. And if you're feeling out of sorts, honor that. And then from there, you can do things to do the trauma work. Just on a sense, though, we were talking about the pelvic floor earlier. I would say, when it comes to sexual abuse or anything that causes trauma, even pregnancy and childbirth can traumatize the pelvic floor. If you feel like you're having any sort of, discomfort with intercourse, or you're getting chronic UTIs, or your hips or your low back are in pain a lot, or you don't enjoy sex, like I was saying, trouble with it, but if you just, these are all things that are signaling that there can be some kind of holding pattern or tightening in that area. So I'd mentioned pelvic PT is a big thing that people do, but also something as simple as I offer yoga-centered trauma or trauma-centered yoga to folks. There's breathing techniques you can do. There's just so much that you can do, but please lead with compassion and patience. This is not an overnight thing. It's an ongoing journey.
Sure. I love that. And I love that so many of the things you recommend are practical things that we can do, even today. So that's amazing. And I could continue on with this conversation all day, but we do have to take a short break. So we're going to do that now. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and we're going to come back and continue talking practical pieces. I want to learn more about your books and more advice for the audience on how they can heal from their trauma and support their fertility. So we'll be right back. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Kayla Smith here. I hope you're loving this episode as much as I am. We will be back shortly, but first, let's hear a word from our amazing sponsor. Trust me, it's something that you'll definitely want to hear, especially if you're passionate about fertility and hormone health. Did you know that we have an exclusive herbal tea crafted especially for fertility, hormones, and reproductive health? This isn't just any tea. It's a nurturing blend of 5 potent herbs, each chosen for their unique ability to support fertility and hormone balance. Imagine the benefits of red raspberry leaf, nettles, chamomile, antioxidant-rich green tea, white peony, and the delightful rooibos vanilla all in one soothing cup. This delicious, nutritious tea is perfect for starting your morning or relaxing in the evening. So why wait? Head on over to our website, hormonepuzzlesociety.com/fertility-tea to support your fertility journey in the most natural and enjoyable way. Now let's get back to our insightful episode and continue our hormone puzzle journey together. Hey, Amelia, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
Sure. So we touched on a lot of practical pieces in the first half, but let's just maybe summarize for the audience, or if there's anything new you want to add, just maybe 5 things that they can do today to really start to release their trauma. Well, first recognize, then release and heal.
Okay. So number 1 is when we think about people who have been traumatized, especially interpersonal and relationship trauma, there's such a perpetuating belief that self-care is selfish, and that being, self-aware and focused on the self are things that are just, add-ons that we don't really need. They are everything. So I want you to start first by paying attention to yourself. And so whatever way feels best for you. So there's no one way that's the best, but if it's journaling, if it's meditating, if it's praying, if it's, taking mindful walks, whatever it is that makes you feel connected to your self energy is going to be crucial in this, because that's where you find what's really happening. Now, I know for a lot of people who have experienced trauma, being in that quiet space with yourself can feel scary. It can feel scary sometimes. And I even have a client I'm thinking of who she doesn't like to use the word safe in reference to her body because her body doesn't feel safe to her right now. So if that's a word that's triggering to you also, you can use any word that feels true to you. So for her, instead, we use grounded. Okay, so whatever makes you feel most fill in the blank, grounded, I'll just say that. Number 2 is that this is probably opposite of what you or anyone may want to do after trauma. Try not to isolate yourself. Because a lot of healing happens in relationship, and please expecting you to go out and, air your traumas for everyone. But even just finding a person, whether that be a therapist, whether that be, a spiritual guide or a teacher or anyone, whether it be your hairdresser, I don't care. Someone that you feel like you can have them experience and witness you can be very healing. And actually also very important if you are, especially if, for instance, you've experienced gaslighting, it can be very jarring to your confidence and your narrative about the trauma you experienced. So having someone to talk to about it is very important. And it also helps us to just heal in general. There's really science out there about, I was saying earlier, that the brain can be altered by trauma. Being with other people is highly repairing for our DNA and the way that our brain functions. Number 3, I love the acronym HALT. Have you heard that acronym before? Right.
I haven't. I love an acronym though.
Oh, so, okay. You're like, no, I love an acronym.
My whole platform is the puzzle acronym. So
okay. Well, I did not make this one up. I'll have to look up who made it up. I forgot. So I'm not going to take credit for making it up, but I will take credit for spreading it all over the place because I love it. So HALT is hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I think that's such a great just baseline to check in on. So if you're feeling more agitated, more stressed, if you're just, the symptoms are rearing a little bit more, you're feeling more cautious, more untrusting, because remember, this can be perception or it can also be a physical experience. Asking yourself, have I fed myself? Is there anyone that I am feeling anger towards or anything that I need to express myself about? Do I need someone? So lonely. Do I need presence? This can even be a pet. This can even be going into a coffee shop and doing your work amidst other people, even if you're not talking to them, can be helpful. And then tired. Rest is very important. I mean, without sleep, without rest, we can't even process this. The 4th thing is to not forget your body. Like really, really don't forget your body. And this goes beyond HALT. This is really to the point of what we've been talking about this whole time. If your body is trying to survive, if your body is not being taken care of as you're trying to heal, it's going to make it that much more difficult for you to heal. I think of the way that our reproductive system is such a mirror for what's happening overall, energetically, and how we're feeling. There was a story I once told when I really got this, and I was in my early 20s. It was like after my last thesis class in my graduate program. I was late, like my period was late, and I'm thinking, oh no, like this is not what I want. And not at that time in my life. So I walk out, the class is over, my thesis is done, I'm about to graduate. I open the door and boom, what do you expect? There goes there comes my cycle. It was like in that moment, my body knew, okay, you don't have to be stressed anymore. Now we can do the other functions.
Right.
Right. So if you're not, doing things for me, it's some form of physical movement. But whatever it is that you need, I would encourage you to find a way to move away. And the final thing is, honestly, like really, please try to take your time. This is a journey and there's so much you can learn, and you'll continue learning stuff even just as you listen to this episode.
Sure. Oh my goodness. I love all of those. And you did freeze a little bit on the last one. So can you repeat that? Did you say sleep? Was that one of the ones?
Oh, no, that's okay. No, I was saying sleep is definitely important, especially because when we consider what I was saying earlier about trauma memories.
Yeah.
That they don't get organized in a neat little row, but if we need to fully process, we need sleep. And that's why like treatments like EMDR, for instance, are designed to emulate some of the things that we get in sleep with rapid eye movement.
Yeah.
Because that's part of how our brain processes. So we need rest. It also helps with decision fatigue. Without rest, our decision fatigue is so much worse.
Sure.
And if you're someone who has experienced trauma, I will tell you, you will probably hit decision fatigue earlier in your day because throughout your day, you're making extra choices on top of what other folks are making. You're choosing, am I safe here? Can I talk to this person? Do I want to do this thing? Is this risk okay to take? It's constant. And so rest is so essential because when we hit decision fatigue, we have two reactions. We either shut down or we get impulsive. So
Sure. I love that. And all of those are so helpful and so valuable. And I know we've talked a lot about women throughout this show, but all of this applies to men too. They
absolutely.
Trauma. So I wanted to point that out that just, it's not just for the woman in the relationship, but also the male partner. So super important.
Literally everything I said is for both genders aside from your menstrual cycle. That's the only thing that doesn't apply. But no, I work with men and women, and I actually love focusing on men's mental health because I think that's part of us ending trauma cycles.
Sure, for sure. I love it. Yeah. And talk to us. I know you've written many books. I think there's a few that are really relevant for this audience. And so talk to us about that. What was the inspiration around writing? You have one that's Gaslighting Recovery for Women, the complete guide to recognizing manipulation and achieving freedom from emotional abuse. So I find a lot of the audience members, myself included, I mean, we've all experienced gaslighting to some degree. So talk to us about that book and what made you want to write that.
Well, oddly enough, my first book is what made me want to write that.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
what was your first book?
So my first book was What I Wish I Knew, Surviving and Thriving After an Abusive Relationship, which I co-wrote with Kendall Ann Combs, who I met when I was on her podcast. But this was before COVID. I was actually on her podcast in person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was in the area. We actually met, and I met her whole entire being.
Well, I always have wanted to do podcasting in person, and I'm like, who can I get in my area to come to my office? And it's
so funny. I've thought I used to have a co-host on The Sensitivity Doctor. She lived in Portugal, but she comes every once in a while to the States for work. And we tried to figure out how to do it in my home office once when she was here. The logistics are crazy.
Oh, wow.
Like, you have to have so much equipment to make it happen. Yeah. So, or at least make it happen with a high quality. Yeah. So anyways, wow. Where did
that far?
No, that's okay. Yeah. So the first book, so it was her trauma story and it was her survival story of getting out of an abusive relationship where I followed along with her. She was telling the trajectory of her story, and then I was giving these kind of clinical snapshots. Like she would tell how they met. And then I, for example, outlined love bombing and, all these things that were red flags that were coming up in her relationship. And then we invite the reader to reflect on what they know now that they've read her and then read my reaction. And I was saying to you, we recorded it on Audible too, which I think we really wanted to do that so that people who don't feel safe having the book on their coffee table because of maybe who they live with would have the option to have it in the safety of their library on their phone, which sometimes even then can be a risk. But so during that, the term gaslighting came out quite a few times in her story because it was something she experienced. And so I started digging into it and realized, wow, this has been a problem for our entire history of being a human. However, it was really only a term that was created in the early 1900s in response to art forms. There was a play and a movie.
Wow.
Called Gaslight, a British play called Gaslight in the 20s, and then and that was a play. And then an Oscar award winning movie called Gaslight based on the play here in the States a couple of years later. And the term really at its core just means that it is an emotional abuse tactic intended to manipulate, coerce, confuse, jar, as to use your word, jar the internal world of someone or a group. Wow. It's important to recognize that a group can also be gaslit. So the irony, though, is that the same year I was writing this book it was publishing, was the very same year it was named the word of the year.
Wow.
Yeah, because it increased thousands percentage-wise in searches online. And I believe this has a lot to do with what's happened in our culture over the last couple of years. We're not going to get political, but we can thank politics for speeding up our awareness of gaslighting.
For sure. Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to get those books and read them myself because I'm sure they're so valuable and, can be so healing. And so thank you for sharing that. I know our audience can really benefit from those as well.
Sure. Yeah. And they both have lots of skills. That's the one thing I like to make sure. Virtually all my books are always intended to educate, empower, but then also equip. I want the person to feel equipped to walk away with, okay, you've told me this, so now what do I do with it?
I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, Dr. Kelley, I could talk to you all day, but we do have to start to wrap up. So just a few things before we do that. First, I just want to tell you thank you from the bottom of my heart. You've been an amazing guest, and I really appreciate you being here. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Sure. And then I also would love to play a little game with you. I want our audience to know you personally.
Oh, I like games.
It's really fun. So how it works, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You're going to say the first thing that comes to your mind. And if you want to skip, just say pass.
Okay.
Favorite food?
Macaroni and cheese or snow crab with butter.
Okay.
Depends on my mood.
Yeah, right. Least favorite food?
I don't like cloves and I don't like mushroom. No, not like meat. I don't like meat. I don't eat meat.
Okay.
I eat fish, but not other meats.
Yeah. Got it.
Look at me. I can't give you a straight answer. I'm sorry.
No, I don't like cloves either. They're
weird. They just, weird. I don't mind the smell in Christmas things, but.
How about your favorite vacation spot?
Oh, I really love going new places. So for me, it's more like checking off different countries and things like that. But if I was going to say favorite vacation spot to repeat, it would actually be the Finger Lakes in New York.
Okay.
Close to where I grew up. Very
cool. Never been there. I love it.
It's a beautiful wine region.
Okay. I love that too. How about a bucket list item that you plan to either do this year or that you're currently doing?
Okay. I'll give you a professional and for fun.
Okay.
Professional bucket list, I want to do a TED Talk. I really want to do a TED Talk. And there's TEDx Raleigh happening, and I literally have sent them 4 ideas.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness.
So I'm just going to keep doing it every year until they finally say yes. Personal bucket list, I really want to go to Bali, or I really want to see the Rugby World Cup in New Zealand and see the All Blacks do the haka in person.
Very cool. That's so crazy. So my other 2 guests today said Bali. There must be
really. I just want to go there because I guess culturally they all smile. I just feel that'd be very interesting to see.
Right. And it's beautiful. So there's that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yes. How about your first concert?
Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed. All for One,
Okay. Yeah.
which is like super cheesy late 90s R&B. I'm so jealous. My husband's first concert was BB King.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, and that was when he was in like high school. I'm like, he was so much cooler than
how
me.
funny. I grew up in Memphis, so I did
Oh,
have BB King's on Bill Street. Yeah.
oh,
So
nice.
I love it. My first was Aerosmith. So
That's, see, you can be proud of that. I can't be proud of All for One.
Oh, I love it. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you again for being here. Tell everybody where they can find you and learn more about your work.
Sure. So you can check out basically everything I have to offer on my website at ameliakelley.com. I'm super active on Instagram, not as active on all the other platforms. And I have offerings different places. I've got some meditations on Insight Timer. I'm going to be offering some CEU courses on PESI. I'm going to be teaching my first one next Friday, actually, so I'm a little nervous about that. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like just anywhere and everywhere, but start with my website.
Yes. And we'll link that in the show notes, like I said earlier, so it'll be easy to find. And any well, first, you have a free gift for us? Yeah, something about a workbook coming out next month.
Oh, yes. Well, so I'm very excited about this. I have Megan from my area who is helping me rebrand my entire website. Like, super fun. I'm so excited. It's going to be very geared around regulating highly sensitive nervous systems, neurodiverse nervous systems, and traumatized nervous systems. So just kind of like the deep feelers. And on that site, we're going to have a way for you to sign up for free monthly courses and workbook sheets that go with the courses. One of the courses is totally centered around recovering from gaslighting trauma. And the other course is going to be centered around being empowered with ADHD.
Wow. I love that.
I'm super excited. So you can check out ameliakelley.com. It's honestly going to be live. I don't know when this episode is going to come out.
Yeah, I think you're not scheduled until like July. So it should
perfect. It's already out.
Yeah, July 15th. So that'll be perfect.
Awesome. So so you can find it already. So it's available at your fingertips. And there's also going to be a lot of other offerings, but that one specifically are things that I had been initially approached by someone to kind of offer them as a subscription. And I said, no.
Yes.
I want these to be for people to get on a regular bite-sized basis. So, yep, please check it out.
Awesome. I love it. Well, any final thoughts, any piece of advice you want to leave us with before we close?
Just ask the questions. If you're curious about something, just ask. There's someone out there who's so wanting to help and support you. It's never an inconvenience. I think it's so much better to just have people in your corner. Oh yeah, you can check out my blog on Psychology Today in your corner. And if there's ever anything anyone wants me to write about or research, I love knowing that someone's interested in something, and I will go explore it and create something for you. So please reach out if you have ideas or things you want me to look into.
I love that. Amazing. Well, thank you again for being here.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Sure. And thank you to everybody who's listening to this episode of the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. We're so grateful for you, and we hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time. So bye for now. Hey, hang on a second. Before you go, I've got some fantastic free resources waiting for you over at our website, all designed to support your journey. When I was going through my own 2 years of infertility, I wish that there had been something like this to guide me. There just wasn't. And that's why I created these resources specifically for you. And here's a little secret. The strategies and the foods that I share in these resources are the exact same ones that helped me conceive, not once, but twice, even after being told that it wasn't possible. So trust me, I know these tools work. Make sure you check them out. And I can't wait for you to be my next success story. Thank you so much for joining me today. And don't forget to check the show notes of this episode. If you enjoyed our time together, please hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. This would mean so much to me, and it's how more people just like you can find our show. See you next week on the Hormone Puzzle Podcast.